We've already talked about actors with difficult personalities who hit rock bottom, starred in trash for years, and had to sell off their property. Mickey Rourke took it to a whole new level. When he was on top, everyone fell in love with him. When he was down, he lived in a truck, beat people up, and literally cut off parts of himself. So today, let's take a look at a cracked but one-of-a-kind relic of the 80s. A guy who left behind a trail of missed blockbusters and burned bridges like it was a lifestyle choice, and still proved that real talent doesn't disappear. It just takes a break with a bottle and a chihuahua. Philip Andre Rourke never planned on becoming an actor. At first, he just wandered the streets with local bullies and got himself into trouble. Later, some kind people hinted there were better ways to burn off excess testosterone than street fights, like stepping into a boxing ring. And word is, the actor actually did pretty well there, seriously considering boxing as a career path. But then the planets aligned. A friend asked Rourke to step in for a stage production of Jean Genet's Death Watch. And just like that, thanks to a playwright who mostly wrote about murderers, thugs, and pimps, Mickey realized he really liked acting. Unlike a certain member of the Coppola family, Rourke didn't have to come up with a stage name. Mickey was a childhood nickname. The actor's dad had given it to him after the baseball player Mickey Mantle. With that very nickname and $400 in his pocket, Mickey headed to New York determined to become an actor. And suddenly it turned out he had some serious natural talent. Rourke was accepted into Lee Strasberg's acting studio from the first try, one of the few chosen from thousands of applicants. To give you some perspective, Jack Nicholson and Dustin Hoffman only got in on their 5th try. Rourke was probably just as surprised by his own luck and studied hard, spending every dollar he earned into paying for the classes. He worked as a chip vendor, a pool cleaner, even a bar bouncer. It took him several years to land his first role. In the end of the 70s, he was cast as a background extra in Steven Spielberg's 1941. Over the next few years, Rourke appeared in minor roles in both film and TV. Picking out early highlights, it's probably Body Heat by Lawrence Kasdan and Barry Levinson's Diner that deserves special attention. In Diner, the actor had one of the lead roles even, and his face was on the poster. Not bad, considering the film earning nominations for an Oscar and a Golden Globe. Both movies did well at the box office, by the way. Keep that in mind. We'll come back to this fact later. Despite Diner's success, it's widely considered that Mickey Rourke's true breakout role came in Francis Ford Coppola's Rumblefish in 1983. That movie also launched 2 other actors' careers, Nicolas Cage and Matt Dillon. But out of the 3, Rourke got the biggest boost from Rumblefish. Dillon's career would eventually stall, and Cage would shoot into mimetic superstardom a bit later. Rourke himself claims the film didn't really have a script. Francis Ford was apparently writing the dialogue on the fly. Sometimes he was too busy to even do that, so Rourke and Dillon would just stare at each other, booze a bit, and start improvising. Judging by the end result, they must have done a decent job. Both critics and audiences really liked the film. There was just one problem. Hardly anyone saw Rumblefish at the time, and the film flopped at the box office. The same fate befell Rourke's next 2 projects, The Pope of Greenwich Village and Year of the Dragon. The latter had a decent budget of $24 million, making only 19 and receiving mixed reviews from both viewers and critics. But here's the twist. Years later, Quentin Tarantino named Year of the Dragon as the movie that heavily influenced his vision as a director. After that, critics suddenly noticed that maybe this film was actually pretty unique and interesting. Later on, we'll get to the part where Tarantino almost played a huge role in reviving Rourke's career. In fact, it's filled with could-have-been hits. One of them was Beverly Hills Cop in 1984. Obviously, Rourke never participated in this one, but not because he turned it down. He actually agreed and was paid around $500,000 for the part. But then, the script kept getting rewritten, revised, and reapproved. After 6 months of this circus, the actor ran out of patience and left the project, keeping the payment according to his contract. With Rourke in the lead, the movie would have been something completely different for sure. Like, imagine it without Eddie Murphy's endless improvisations. After leaving Beverly Hills Cop to Murphy, Rourke signed on to the film that would essentially make him a legend, turning him into one of the biggest sex symbols of the 80s. Looking at the production history of 9.5 Weeks, it's honestly a miracle the movie became a cult classic and didn't eliminate the careers of everyone involved. There were problems at nearly every turn. At first, Kim Basinger almost ran away from the project after being asked to crawl on the floor collecting filthy evergreen pieces of paper during the audition. The team loved her, but the actress was pissed and said she wouldn't tolerate that kind of humiliation. The solution was simple. Director Adrian Lyne and Mickey Rourke sent Basinger flowers, so she melted on the spot and agreed to participate. Most likely, the actress regretted this decision pretty quickly. Basinger was forbidden from speaking to Rourke off-camera, and the director refused to discuss the film with her, telling she's horribly mediocre in almost every scene. With Mickey, the director acted completely differently, discussing upcoming scenes and praising his acting talent. In a way, Basinger's experience during filming mirrored the dynamic of her character and Rourke's in the movie. She was fed up with the way she was treated, and even more with Rourke himself, who always smelled like an ashtray and who she had to passionately kiss in nearly every scene. The actress got so disgusted at some point that she refused to ride in the same elevator with Mickey. The film was shot in chronological order, and all that psychological pressure on the actress eventually led to a very real breakdown toward the end of the shoot. Since her character was going through something similar in the story, the director was thrilled with the outcome and never missed a chance to boast about his genius. Adrian Lyne was clearly taking notes from Kubrick's The Shining, where similar tactics almost made Shelley Duvall go nuts. Both Basinger and Duvall were critical of this approach, but later admitted it might have been what helped them deliver stronger performances. In fact, Basinger later said 9.5 weeks might be her best film, and was genuinely upset it got chopped to pieces. And chopped it was. After disastrous test screenings, MGM panicked and kept sending the film back to the editing room, pushing the release date further and further. 9.5 weeks finally hit theaters a year and a half later and immediately bombed, earning $7 million, costing $17 million. To top it off, Basinger and the screenwriters got hit with Razzie nominations. In short, everything pointed to the filmmakers needing to start looking for delivery jobs. But then something wild happened. The movie opened overseas and became a massive hit. It made $100 million worldwide and stayed in theaters for nearly 5 years in France alone. Released on home video, 9.5 Weeks became one of MGM's top-selling titles of all time. The whining critics and the American box office flop were instantly forgotten, and the movie got its cult status badge. No one had any complaints about it anymore. Well, except maybe some modern viewers who now know exactly what inspired a certain infamous book about 50 Shades of Rourke's character. After 9.5 weeks, every Hollywood director wanted Mickey in their movies all of a sudden. And yes, that's when the actor became one of the most legendary role refusers in the industry. According to Rourke himself, not all those rejections were actually his doing, though. Take Rain Man, for instance. Rumor has it he simply forgot to show up to the audition. Rourke claims otherwise. He wanted to be in the film, the studio wanted it, Dustin Hoffman personally wanted it. But Michael Ovitz, yes, the very guy you might remember from our Steven Seagal video, headed the talent agency at the time and strongly insisted they go with someone more agreeable and predictable. That someone being Tom Cruise, obviously. That's at least what Mickey says. Rourke was also offered Top Gun, and that one he handed over to Cruise all on his own, no industry drama involved. The movie eventually made $357 million on a budget of $15 million. So it's entirely possible that somewhere in Cruise's mansion there's a wall shrine with Rourke's portrait where he gives thanks every day for his spectacular late 80s career boost. Director Oliver Stone also danced around Mickey for a while during casting for Platoon. He wanted the actor for the role that eventually went to Tom Berenger. Rourke liked the project overall but turned it down and gave a specific reason. He didn't want to work with Charlie Sheen, who in his words was a pretty shitty actor. Rourke also declined Brian De Palma's The Untouchables. That role went to Kevin Costner. And since the movie gave his career a solid push, Costner might have a Rourke wall shrine of his own. Instead of those projects, Mickey signed on for the noir horror Angel Heart. As often happens with Mickey's films, it bombed at the box office, but later gained a bit of a cult following. Even more notable is that while filming this movie, Rourke clashed with Robert De Niro. Most sources say it was De Niro who started the tension, though unintentionally. He refused to speak to Mickey on set, believing it would help them both stay in character. According to Rourke, however, De Niro tried to control his performance and wouldn't let him improvise. Meanwhile, De Niro himself improvised constantly, just didn't let anyone else do it. And when Rourke pushed back, De Niro would run to director Alan Parker, who would immediately scold anyone daring to challenge the big star. In one scene, Mickey improvised again and touched De Niro during a take, after which the director pulled him aside and politely asked to never do that again. Parker spent the whole shoot, as Mickey put it, kissing De Niro's ass and drinking, so no one really tried to contain the conflict, and it turned into a full-on personal hatred, one that would come back to bite Rourke later, but we'll get to that. That same year, Mickey added 2 more flops to his resume, A Prayer for the Dying and Barfly. For the first one, he got a real tattoo, and for the second, had 2 front teeth removed. It's possible he was inspired by Nicholas Coppola's similar move back in 1984 for Birdie, though Cage famously had them pulled without anesthesia. Whether Mickey did the same remains unknown, but something tells me he probably did. According to Rourke, what happened with A Prayer for the Dying was especially frustrating. He signed up for a deep, meaningful drama, and the studio turned it into a dumb, filthy action flick in the editing room. The outraged actor didn't hold back and publicly crap-talked the studio execs, especially the head. As you can imagine, that didn't exactly boost his networking points or industry reputation. Johnny Handsome, released in 1989, bombed at the box office even worse, making just $7 million on a budget of $20 million. But what makes this film notable is that Rourke actually got along with its director Walter Hill, a rare occurrence indeed. Instead of hating the director or the studio execs, this time Mickey clashed with the film's producer Charles Roven. The actor later said he was annoyed by some arrogant guy in dark sunglasses hanging around the auditions, so he kindly asked him to get lost and stop bothering the professionals. At the time, Roven had just a couple of titles under his belt and didn't put up much of a fight. Of course, that guy in sunglasses would later become the producer behind Nolan's Batman trilogy, most of the DC Universe, and Oppenheimer. And word is, he didn't forget or forgive that insult. Instead of flopping with Johnny Handsome and pissing off a future Hollywood heavyweight, Rourke could have starred in Peter Weir's Dead Poets Society. The actor was initially interested and had early talks with the director, but then demanded some script changes Weir wasn't willing to make. So Rourke lost his temper in Delta, and the role went to Robin Williams. We'll never know what Dead Poets Society would have looked like with Mickey in the lead, but it's safe to say Wild Orchid probably wouldn't have happened without him at all. Nor would the film debut of his future wife, Kari Otis. She landed the role in Wild Orchid after Rourke found her extremely attractive during auditions, insisted she be cast, and later married her. Both actors earned Razzie nominations for their efforts. Reviews were around a 3 out of 10, and the movie made just $11 million, costing $7 million. A flop on all fronts. In general, everything needed for an early Rourke's film to become a big hit on home video. And Wild Orchid surely did, basically following the 9.5-week steps. Some say rumors of a real sex scene between Rourke and Otis in the movie helped boost those sales considerably. Sure, Rourke's box office flops often came with some nuance, but either them or Razzie nods didn't go unnoticed by Hollywood studios. In addition, Rourke wasn't exactly a fan of compromise or playing nice, so he was managing to piss off more and more people in the industry every year. Decent offers came in less and less, and often Mickey took on his next film for the paycheck. After the crime drama Desperate Hours flopped, he participated in 2 more films purely for the cash, White Sands and Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. He hated both, but Harley got the worst of this hatred. Mickey claimed the only good part of the movie was Don Johnson, with everything else being a pile of garbage. Funny enough, Harley was originally meant to star Don Johnson with his buddy Bruce Willis, but someone somewhere made endless calibrations again, so the film stayed in pre-production for 3 years. By the time they were ready to shoot, Bruce's career had rocketed into space, and this film no longer fit the brand. So Mickey Rourke ended up being Don Johnson's buddy on screen instead. Both Harley Davidson and White Sands had budgets around $23 million, but neither one managed to even hit 10 at the box office. Frustrated by the results and fed up with how things worked in Hollywood, Rourke didn't bother trying to reboot his acting career. He took a more honest route, sent acting to hell, and returned to boxing, figuring he must be a crap actor if things were going this badly. From 1991 to 1994, Mickey fought 8 professional boxing matches and didn't lose a single one. But the price for that result were constant injuries, including facial damage he later tried to fix with plastic surgeries. Those leading to, let's put it that way, pretty interesting results. More than that, the tabloids kept reporting Rourke used boxing moves at home too, and the punching bag was none other than his wife Kari Otis, who at the time was heavily addicted to opioids. We won't get deep into the domestic drama, not really our thing, but just giving an idea of sheer madness and the depths of high relationship. During one especially nasty fight, deranged Mickey cut off his own finger, which later had to be surgically reattached. Given all that, it would have been strange to expect some dream project to suddenly appear in front of Mickey. But guess what? It actually freaking happened. Quentin Tarantino's first choice for Butch in Pulp Fiction was Mickey Rourke. And honestly, who could blame him? That part seemed destined for Mickey. But here's the twist. Rourke, hearing what he'd be paid and not even bothering to read the script, laughed his ass off and Delta to a boxing match in Kansas City. The role went to Bruce Willis, who didn't care much about the money at the time. He just wanted to reboot his career, which is exactly what he did there alongside John Travolta. Years later, Rourke would want the very same thing Willis was chasing, a comeback. And part of that urgency came from necessity. Professional boxing had left Rourke physically wrecked, which meant it was time to drag himself back into the filmmaking industry. Rourke planned his comeback with Bullet and Double Team. He wrote the script for Bullet himself and became friends with Tupac Shakur on set. Originally, Bullet was meant to get a theatrical release, but after poor test screenings, it was sent straight to home video. The Double Team did slightly better and made it to theaters, though hardly anyone noticed, like most of Van Damme's projects at the time. Actually, Rourke has a curious story involving Jean-Claude that we already told in our Van Damme video. Go check that one out for the full version, but here's the short one. According to Mickey, he once witnessed Jean-Claude get into a fight with his own bodyguard, Chuck Zito. By funny coincidence, Chuck used to be Rourke's boxing coach, and Mickey knew right away. Spinning kicks and naked buttocks wouldn't do much against such a menace. At best, the only thing that Belgian ballet was going to earn in this situation was an aesthetic flight over the bar after a solid right hook. So naturally, Rourke rushed in and threw his big body in front of dominated and almost dying Jean-Claude. Zito, seeing who'd come to the rescue, supposedly apologized and retreated. And thus, thanks to Mickey, the world was spared the tragic loss of its most beloved master of the split. Or so goes Mickey's version of events, which notably is backed by absolutely no one else. Rourke's heroic defense of Van Damme surprisingly did nothing for his own career, however. Over the next few years, he kept appearing in flops or films that skipped theaters entirely and went straight to video. That includes the inevitable 9.5-week sequel, which no one asked for. The actor even appeared in Vincent Gallo's Buffalo 66, a film made on a cracker budget, which at least meant it didn't bomb too badly. Rourke did manage to land a solid project in 1998, though, Terrence Malick's The Thin Red Line. According to the actor, he gave it everything he had, but audiences never saw the result of that effort. Every single one of his scenes ended up on the cutting room floor. Rourke claims the studio didn't want him in the film, supposedly because he'd gotten into a fight with Sean Penn, who then whispered a few words into the right executive's ear. Whether that's true or just Mickey being Mickey is hard to say, though knowing what comes next, he might have even been joking. By the time all this was happening, Rourke had already divorced his wife, been kicked out of his own house because of debts, and lived in a truck. He survived on $200 a month, ate from supermarkets while pushing a goddamn shopping cart, and occasionally treated himself to the cheapest spaghetti at local diners. Eating those, he was once spotted by Sylvester Stallone. Sly was terrified by the sight of his colleague, now looking like that creepy thing behind the diner from Mulholland Drive. Horrified, Sly offered Rourke a role in Get Carter and paid him out of his own pocket, enough for Mickey to stop worrying about money for almost a year. Stallone even fought with the studio, which wanted nothing to do with Rourke. That's why later on, Mickey would design a few costumes for Stallone's movies for free and agree to show up in The Expendables, a movie he otherwise would have ignored. But Rourke says that for Stallone, he'd gladly walk around bare-assed on camera if needed, because Sly was the only one who helped during the darkest days. Whether Rourke and Sean Penn had patched things up by then, or Penn just wanted a front-row seat to watch a fallen rival, or maybe Rourke was just joking, calling Penn a piece of shit in interviews. Who knows? Either way, Rourke's next film was The Pledge, directed by Penn. It bombed at the box office, but warm reviews from critics softened the blow a bit. Then came Tony Scott's Man on Fire, which barely broke even. But Once Upon a Time in Mexico finally marked Rourke's first box office success in, well, remember Body Heat and Diner from the beginning of this video? Diner came out in 1982, and until Mexico, which was released in 2003, it was Rourke's last film that actually made its money back in box office, meaning the actor went 21 years, almost his entire career without a single box office hit. In 2005, Robert Rodriguez brought Mickey into his another box office success, Sin City. We covered that film in more detail in our video on Jessica Alba. In this one, we'll just say, casting Rourke as a skull-crushing brute with a moral code was an undeniably big brain move from Rodriguez. Sin City pulled in $160 million on a budget of $40 and became one of the most visually striking films of the decade. Domino and Stormbreaker briefly interrupted the box office celebration, dragging Rourke back into his usual territory of financial flops. And maybe that's where he would have stayed without a proper comeback. Maybe, if The Wrestler hadn't happened. We recently told you how the lead role in The Wrestler was originally meant for Nicolas Cage, but at the time Nicolas was already in financial trouble, so he chose Bangkok Dangerous instead, being offered 10 times more money there. After that, Aronofsky addressed Rourke and told him flat out, no big money, but a movie that would resurrect the actor's career. The director also made one thing very clear. Rourke had to follow orders and cut the diva crap. According to Mickey, under normal circumstances, someone who said that would have gotten punched in the face. But there was something about Darren that earned his respect, and Rourke actually behaved on set. Not that he had zero freedom while filming. On the contrary, Aronofsky let the actor rewrite all of his character's lines, believing it would make the dialogue feel real. But overall, the shoot was brutal for Rourke. He worked 16-hour days and got more injuries during production than he ever had in the ring. The pain got so bad that he had a production assistant helping him up and down the stairs. Rourke says when a rap party was thrown, he was at home, lying in bed crying and shaking, barely believing this nightmare was finally over. The rest, as they say, is history. Golden Globe win, Oscar nomination, and Sean Penn taking the trophy. There's a story that after the ceremony, Penn and Rourke went out drinking and Penn tried to hand him the Oscar, saying Mickey deserved it more. Let every viewer decide for themselves whether that actually happened and how much truth there is in what Penn supposedly said. We'll just note, had to be reminded what exactly Sean Penn won that particular Oscar for. With the wrestler, Rourke's rare, in fact, previously non-existent streak of box office success continued. For the Iron Man sequel in 2010, he didn't get paid much, just around $500,000. But he got the chance to play another tough guy, learn some Russian, and even visit Moscow's infamous Butyrka prison. The golden teeth were his own idea, and his own work, too. Mickey wanted to make Ivan Vanko not just a typical villain, but someone the audience could actually empathize with. So he pushed for scenes that would give his character more depth. They shot them, sure, but in the editing room, nearly all of them were scrapped. Rourke was furious, and in his usual manner unleashed a tornado of F-words at everyone responsible for this butchery. Iron Man 2 became Rourke's biggest box office hit, earning $624 million with a budget of $200 million. The Expendables and Immortals also did well, making nearly $500 million combined. Altogether, movies starring Mickey that year earned over $1 billion. That kind of momentum should have sent his career soaring, it seemed. But then, something broke. Why? That's the tricky part. Some say it was Mickey's appearance. Trying to fix the damage from his first plastic surgeon, the actor found someone even more gifted who managed to make his face completely unrecognizable. Others say it was Rourke's attitude. During his comeback, he once again managed to piss off the entire industry and turn himself into a Hollywood outcast. There's some truth to that second theory. Case in point, director Martin McDonagh reportedly wanted Rourke for his film 7 Psychopaths. What happened between them isn't entirely clear, but afterward, Mickey called McDonagh an asshole who wants too much for nothing and advised him to go jerk off squatting. So yeah, instead of Mickey, the role went to Woody Harrelson. The last big-budget film with Rourke was Sin City 2 in 2014. Shot similarly and with an equally stellar cast, the sequel ended up disappointing fans and made only $39 million, costing $65 million. After that, Rourke was fully embraced by B-movies, many of which didn't even make it to theaters. According to Mickey, he actually had a shot at a major project in 2019. Martin Scorsese was supposedly considering him for The Irishman. De Niro heard about this and said he'd leave the project if Rourke joined, which of course wasn't an option. The producers in the studio denied the whole story, by the way, claiming Rourke was never even considered. So you decide who's telling the truth here. Rourke is still making movies, but we're far past any talk of greatness. These days, the goal seems to be just avoiding another trip to the supermarket with a goddamn shopping cart and $200 in pocket. One of the most uncompromising actors in Hollywood occasionally admits he regrets not making the most of his career when he had the chance. He also says it's heartbreaking to observe what those idiots with medical licenses did to his face. Still, the scandals haven't stopped. Mickey hasn't exactly toned down the trash talk, nor has he started playing by Hollywood's rules. In his more reflective moments, he might even genuinely regret a thing or two. But that's the price of true, no-compromise attitude, even in the face of Armageddon, as one character once said. Would have been nice to see Mickey in this role, by the way. What do you think? And while you're thinking, here's the last curious fact. An experienced Hollywood interviewer was once asked which actor made the biggest impression on him. He thought for a second and answered, it was Mickey Rourke, because Mickey was the only one who was thinking before answering a question. Though, to be fair, we're not sure if he ever interviewed Nicolas Cage. Something tells us that conversation would have been memorable too. We actually just did a full video about the talented member of Coppola family. Go check it out if you haven't already. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, throw a like, subscribe, and see you next time.